Welcome to Ask the Expert. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Austin Regival. I'm the Vice President of the Tri-City Regional Chamber. I'm so excited. We've had this one on the calendar for a long time. And this is such an important issue and such a delicate thing that I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Before we get started, this program and you guys being able to attend for free is only possible thanks to STCU. So here from STCU is Jessica to say a few words about their sponsorship. Let's give her a warm round of applause.
Everybody, thanks for coming out for our, I think we're in our 8th month, right? August of the year. And we've been doing this for a few years now, and it's very rewarding and enjoyable for us. So just thank you for coming out. And while I'm up here, I would like to remind you all that it is the Fair Week. And we're the sponsor of Educator Day at the fair tomorrow. So if you have any school employees in your life, if they show up with their school ID at the fair, they get in for free. So yes, it's Fair Week. I know, it's like Fair Week. So again, thank you for coming out and looking forward to hearing your guys' topics today.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Well, for the first half of today's session, we're going to hear from our experts. And then for the second half, it's all going to be questions from the audience. So please, as we are listening to them, think of a couple questions, write them down. Same for you on Zoom. Let me know in the chat. I will ask them for you. But let's meet our speakers today. Bringing a vibrant mix of hands-on experience and energetic insight, Laura Flores has spent over 20 years in human resources, transforming challenges into growth opportunities. Whether she's leading training, speaking at conferences, or serving as a city council member in Grandview, Laura knows how to turn complex topics into actionable insights, always with heart, sass, and a spark of fun. She's passionate about helping individuals and organizations ignite their potential, embrace change, and show up as their boldest selves. Through her coaching, speaking, and consulting, Laura delivers results that stick and makes the journey enjoyable. Please help me welcome Laura Flores. With over 35 years experience in human resources, Debra Kilmer currently serves as the Regional HR Business Partner for Highstreet Insurance, supporting teams across the Western U.S. Her career spans roles in state government at Walla Walla Community College, the Evergreen State College, Washington's College Savings Plan, and the Department of Ecology. She also brings valuable insights from private technology, manufacturing, and small business ownership. Debra is passionate about fostering employee relations, organizational development, and change management, creating work environments where staff can thrive, grow, and feel valued. Her approachable style and dedication make her a trusted advisor in building positive, productive workplaces. This is Debra Kilmer. Last but not least, and I warned him, I don't have a bio for this gentleman, but Josh Hansen is the commercial lines producer at Highstreet Insurance. Josh, could you give us a couple words, couple background on your bio?
Sure, because I would have used Chat GPT anyways. I won't be nearly as eloquent, but so I've been doing insurance as a producer, commercial lines for 10 years, 5 with Highstreet, and I write a lot of different lines, but I really primarily focus on nonprofits.
Great, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to this. Here is your clicker.
Okay, so usually we would stand and do this presentation, but we're just gonna chat because this is a hard topic that a lot of business owners and leaders want to hear about. So we're gonna have more of a dialogue kind of discussion about it. So we're gonna sit and chat with you. So we're talking about navigating tough talks through conflict and accountability, and how we're equipping ourselves and equipping our staff in order to do that. So I just want to see a show of hands of who is owns a business, who's a business owner. Okay, who is a leader here who supervises employees? And who works with other humans that can sometimes be complicated and difficult? Okay, I better not see any hands. Yeah, okay, that's all of us. So great, thank you guys for being here. We have a lot to talk about today. One of the things here is on the Ask the Experts. So great intros by Austin, talking about what we do. So it sounded like if I did the math right, if my math was mathing, there's about half a century of experience in HR here. I know we look good, we look young, but this is what you're getting today. So hopefully we can answer some questions that you may be facing in your workplace, but let's talk about what that looks like first. So who loves difficult conversations? Okay, we got one, yes. There's always one, they're like, oh, I kill at this, I can totally do this every day. And that's awesome, you're probably skilled up, you probably have a lot of experience in it, do it pretty well. So that's where we can get to, but the rest of us, maybe not so much. So we're gonna learn a little bit about what that looks like. But really quick, if you wanna shout out, what are some reasons that we avoid tough conversations or difficult conversations in the workplace?
They're awkward.
They're awkward, it's so weird, right? Have you ever had the body odor conversation? That's weird, that's awkward, yeah, uncomfortable. What else? Why do we avoid them?
You're gonna hurt someone's
You're
feelings.
gonna hurt someone's feelings, they're gonna be sad, yeah, what else?
Don't wanna say the wrong thing, get humiliated.
Yeah, you say the wrong thing, you're like, oh my God, I look so dumb. Yeah, that's a fear. Anything else?
Fear of what the relationship's gonna look like after.
Yeah, I call it the aftermath. We have this conversation and then we go to the next meeting or to the next day and they're like, Laura, or whatever, you don't know what's gonna happen, right? How about back here?
Unpredictable. You don't know
Unpredictable.
what direction sometimes it'll take.
Yeah, you get prepped and you're ready to go and it just goes sideways, right? So a lot of reasons why we avoid them, but those are the ones that you mentioned are the biggest ones that we encounter in the workplace on why we avoid them. But let's try to figure out how we can spot that to handle them sooner and upskill, like what's your name back here?
Irish.
Irish? Irish. Let's get skilled up like Irish so we can feel like, yeah, do these. So that's the plan. That's the goal, right?
Right. Love it.
Well, perfect. So one of the things I like to do is I'm a prepper, right? I like to prepare myself for things. Usually for me, the night before what am I wearing? Do I have a backup outfit in case it rains? Like what are the shoes? What earrings is gonna go with that? Is my lunch right? Like all the things, right? What's on my calendar? Did I print that out? So I like to prep because it gives you an opportunity to adjust and pivot. So the same thing in your business, if you're a leader in your department, in your business, prepping is really important, like setting the foundation. And one of those things that we set it up is company culture, right? And sometimes you're not the CEO, so you can't build it and you can't put it out there, but you do have your own team. And what's your team look like? What's okay? What's not okay? What are the expectations? In my household, the Laura Flores enterprise, as I call it, me and my two kids, that's what the enterprise is. I call it how we roll around here. So really what it means is how do we talk? When we have conflict, how do we say that? Do you raise your voice at your mom? That's not allowed. So like there's a lot of things and expectations that are already set there that really prevent and avoid things happening in the future that are big conflict. Same thing in the workplace. What are the norms? Can we be late to meetings? Can we be on our laptops while we're in the meetings? Can you raise your voice? Do we use profanity? What's your dress code look like? All of those things, if you set them up ahead of time and people are clued in, it really takes the conflict of addressing those things down to here. Now set yourself up for success, not perfection, because we're humans. There's gonna be conflict, there's gonna be things that we need to address, but if you have it pretty laid out, it really minimizes what you have there. So that company culture is really important to think about what you want from your employees, what you want from your environment, and what you want, how we roll around here, what you want the environment to feel like. The other one is, what is that? Model the behavior you want to see. So again, I use a lot of stories when it comes to my kids, and then I translate in how that works into the workplace. So I can't be a mom and say, kids, don't do drugs, they're bad for you, right? That doesn't work. You can't put something out there and not expect the same thing in return. So you have to model the behavior that you want to see in others. I'll give you a story about this one. As a consultant, I get to go out there and help a lot of businesses, CEOs, with any issues that they have. And he brought me in and he said, Laura, I have this one department. They're not getting along. Their meetings are just conflict. There's passive aggressive comments. They're disrespectful to their supervisor. A lot of gossiping happening, name calling. We really want to do a communications training. I'm like, great, let's meet, let me talk, let's bring your lead in as well, so we can get some examples. As I'm sitting talking to them, what I'm observing in our 1 hour meeting is gossip, talking negatively about their employees, and all the things that they were complaining about is what they were demonstrating. So we have to make sure as people who are setting the tone, whether we're the business owners or the leaders, that we're modeling what we want to see, because we can't hold people to account if we're not the ones holding it to account too. So that's a really important one that I tell clients is whatever you want to see, you've got to do. My kids are watching me, so I'm polite, I'm nice. What are we doing? That's what we need to do with our employees. So that's something that we have control over. And then the last one, and this is a really cool one that I've been helping clients with, is the rules of engagement. So when there is conflict, or when you do have to address something, do you have kind of a process that you do? At Flores Enterprise, one of the processes that I have with my kids is when they have a tough conversation they want to have with me as their CEO slash mom, how do we bring that up? And so my daughter came up to me last week. She's like, Mom, I have something I want to talk to you about, and I want you to keep an open mind. That is our clue that says, oh no, she's gonna tell me something difficult. So what do you have in place with your team, with your employees? How can you address something as a leader or amongst each other that opens up the door that says, hey, we're gonna have a conversation, it's gonna be uncomfortable and tough. Do you have something like that? And if you do know how to open the conversation, then what are the rules of engagement to have that conversation? All right, cool, you're passionate, but we're not gonna yell, not gonna use any cuss words. We're gonna listen, we're gonna not interrupt. So if you have those things, you already are well on your way to have that accountability, conflict resolution type of conversations if it's already set up in the beginning. So making sure that you have some rules of engagement. So going back to that conversation where she's like, Mom, keep an open mind. Want to talk about some things, and they're usually something complex. Hers, I turned 18 and I want to get a tattoo, and I'm like, keeping an open mind, keeping an open mind, you know, kind of thing. Your employees are going to hit you with something like that. I want to talk about my raise. I want to talk about being promoted. I want to talk about how I don't want to be on shift with so-and-so. There's going to be something that's going to be uncomfortable. So how do they bring that up to you or to each other? And then as the conversation's going, what are we really doing about when it's getting heated, when it's getting emotional? And we'll talk a little bit about that. Any questions on the company culture or anything like this? I guess we're going to do some questions at the end, but feel free to, if something comes up, if something sticks in your mind, feel free to jump in. I love to address these. All right. The next one is skilling up, like Irish, right? Like we have a lot of, I'm gonna use the Irish, sorry. Skilling up.
I did it to myself.
Because on the skilling up part is, we know what we want to say, we know what the outcomes that we want. Now it's having the conversation. And Samuel, I'm gonna use you too. If I have to have a conversation with Samuel, I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, but I really like him, but I gotta tell him that his performance or whatever the case is, I want to do a good job about that. It's my job as the leader, as the person that's bringing up the conversation, to have that in the best way that I can. And sometimes I haven't done it enough for me to be good at it. So what things can we do to skill up? So when we get in that situation, we could do it a lot better. So one of the things on here is emotional intelligence. I did a training at a construction company, and they're like, oh, Laura, emotional intelligence, talking about feelings. But really, that's not what we're talking about. It's in the interactions that you're having day to day at work or personal. There's something that's, you're coming across a certain way to people, right? They're already having an impression of you or how you're making them feel just on the interactions that you're having. So if we can be conscious about how we're coming across to someone, it makes it a lot easier when we say, when I approach Debra likes this. I know that she, you know, thinks I'm too chatty, or I shut down, or whatever. If I already know that, how I'm coming across to someone else, I can be aware of that and start to make adjustments when I'm talking to other people. So that emotional intelligence isn't about the feelings. It's just to catch what you're putting out there. And once you become aware of it, what do I do with it? So sometimes our employees trigger us sometimes? They're late. They interrupt, they answer the phone, they get loud, whatever our triggers are, because we all have our own triggers, whatever triggers us, and we start getting emotional and we catch ourselves, what can we do instead? We can manage that, but we have to be aware of it. So sometimes skilling up on emotional intelligence is a big deal, because sometimes employees will say something, you're like, oh, no, you didn't. And then all of a sudden your smart conversation that you had prep goes out the window because now you're just being defensive, right? They said I was a bad supervisor. Let me prove how it wasn't. And you're like, that wasn't even what the conversation was. So sometimes they can get us, and how are we becoming aware and catching that so we can adjust? So skilling up on emotional intelligence, really big deal. And then also, if we have to have conversations that are hard, that are performance-based, maybe somebody has to have discipline, and they're really tough ones. How would we want to be talked to if that was happening to us, right? Still keeping that empathy and compassion piece to it, because you're right, Samuel, the next day you still got to work with them. How is that going to go? You know, how did that interaction go? They may not have liked the message, but you delivered it with empathy and compassion. At least that stays there so that they know, like, I didn't like that she told me that, but okay, she told me that, whatever. She didn't say it in a rude or unprofessional manner. The other really cool one, and I did, anyone familiar with the DISC training, DISC personality assessment? I love to use that one because it's a very simple one to learn, talk about, and then assess people. So I do this one quite often. But if you know who you have to have that tough conversation with, and you know that they're very direct, sometimes very assertive, or if they're very reserved and shut down when you have maybe confrontational conversations towards them, you can understand how to have conversations with them that really impact them. I'll give example, again, going back to the kids. I have 2 kids, a daughter, she's 18, opposite of me, reserved, introverted, quiet. And I have a son, he's more sensitive and chatty and just wants his mom to love him kind of thing. So when I have to deliver the same message to 2 different people with 2 different personalities, it's the same content, but I have to deliver it differently. So when I have family that stays over at my house, they take their rooms, right? That's where we're hosting them. So I come to one of them, and I'm like, so room clean, 4 o'clock, they'll be at 5. She's like, bed. I don't know, bed's a thing. They say that. The kids say that now. So that's how she gets it. If I say anything more, she's gonna glaze over and she's like, I just needed that one piece of info, that bullet point, I'm done. So very direct, very give me the facts. I don't need the fluff. When I go to the other one, hey, Gabriel, oh my gosh, your room looks so great. I love how you decorated. So cousin time, they're coming this weekend. So what we gotta do is that's exhausting. That is not my communication style personally as their leader of the enterprise, but that's what he needs to hear. Because if I would have delivered the message like I did to her, to him, he would have been like, why are you yelling at me, mom? Do you not love me? It is different. So if you think about the people that you work with, either your employees or your coworkers, even up the chain, they all resonate differently with how you communicate with them. Is it someone that you have to be a little bit softer with, a little, how was your weekend before you get into it? Or it's something like, just tell me what I need to do. Thank you so much. Bye. You know, kind of thing. So if you know who you're talking to, you can really customize your conversation, not because it's how you communicate, but it's what they need in order for them to hear what you need to tell them. When I learned this, it was amazing. I call it the platinum rule. So we know the golden rule, right? Treat others as you would like to be treated. But that platinum rule says treat others how they want to be treated. And in a workplace, that really does go a long way so that they understand that you're communicating in a way that they need to hear some of these tough conversations. Because some are task oriented, some are people oriented, some are more direct, some are give me some time to process. I need a day to really think about this. So if you can understand each person that you need to have a conversation with, that's going to be difficult, and communicating in their way, it makes it a lot easier. Love it, love it, love it. It's one of the best tools that I use now, and especially when I'm on city council politics, right? You know, how you communicate with each different person is really what do they need? How do they need to hear it? The other one, when you get into a workplace, is the delivery. What type of conversation are we having? Are we just coaching? Like somebody just needs a little bit additional training, needs to be skilled up? Are we giving some feedback? Your performance is, Or is it attendance? Hey, you've been late a couple times this week, and this is the second week you've done this. Like, what conversation is it? Or is the authority that we need to, the urgency level in our voice a little bit more like, if this continues, this could lead to termination. So once you've identified what conversation you need to have, whether it's something where you're doing a lot of active listening or something where you're delivering a really tough message, and it needs to be very clear that it's serious, understanding what you're having, I think it's going to be a little bit better on how you structure your conversation. And then the last one is, especially in a workplace, what you want to do is be prepared for the conversation. Do you guys know the drive-by conversations? Where you're walking by like, oh, do you have a minute? I want to talk to you. And then it starts and you're like, I wasn't ready for this. I had a whole structure on what I wanted to say about this topic. So sometimes those, especially when it's a tough topic, we want to make sure that we're like, you know what? I want to talk about that. Let's schedule this afternoon after lunch, and then push it aside so that you can be ready for a tough conversation that really has a lot of elements to it, because it's going to be a tough one. So know why you're having the conversation and come with the facts. I know Deborah's going to come up, talk a little bit about like what those look like when it gets to be a little bit more formal of the conversation. What are the facts? Attacking the problem and not the person, and what that looks like, and then what you want as a desired outcome. Some clients hire me to do investigations. That's always fun, right? I just came back from Oregon and we were talking about racism. So that was a good one. And as we're doing that, people who feel like they were violated, their rights were violated, they're like, I don't want anything bad to happen to this person. I just want it to stop. So sometimes the outcome is as simple as, I just don't want to feel like this in the workplace. So conversation needs to happen about, this is what's happening, that you're making people feel like this in the workplace. What can we do to not do that? Because we have certain expectations. So know what the conversation, what you want out of it first, and then work backwards on how do I get there with this person? Understanding who they are, how they communicate, and then if they trigger me, what can I do in that situation? Because people can get loud, and how do we stay calm for that? Excellent. And then enforce the accountability. This is one I think we forget as leaders. I forget it sometimes as a mom. I forget it sometimes. I think about it and it just slips my mind. The first one we talked about it is lead by example. You definitely want to be out there showing what you want them to be doing, right? If you're saying good morning to everyone, if you're staying on time, if you're not late for your meetings, that's what you're telling your people, you're green lighting. So that's a really important one. But the one that comes across all the time is, if you see something that's not meeting the expectations, address it immediately. I just had a client call me last week and she's like, Laura, I need your help. I have this employee, I'm getting complaints by her coworkers that she's being kind of rude and she doesn't want to help. And then she's not meeting her deadlines and she's just kind of a low performer. I'm like, oh man, okay. Let's talk about that. When you brought her in, what'd she say? Well, we haven't talked to her yet. I'm like, okay, well, how long has this been going on? And I'm thinking she's going to tell me a couple of days. She's like, 4 months. And I'm like, okay. So when you do finally bring her in after 4 months of her doing this, you've seen it, her employees or coworkers complaining about it and not doing anything. What does that tell you? She's going to say, well, I've been doing this and no one said anything. I thought it was okay. So addressing it quickly prevents it from becoming a mountain out of a molehill. So always, as soon as you see it, as quickly as you can, address it. I had a CEO, I was there to do, they were doing an introduction, they're doing a meeting, and immediately there was some sidebars. And I guess that's against the company culture. And he's like, oh, we'll go ahead and stop because I know that my team knows not to do sidebars. That really quickly called him out, but it was really quick. It's like, it doesn't happen very often because we call it out so people know that that's not what it is, and not calling out in a bad way, calling it out that we've established this company culture and these expectations. So we're all going to hold each other accountable for that. What he said that after he did the company culture and leading by example is he didn't have to be the one to be calling out or addressing it. They were doing it amongst themselves. Hey, we're not gossiping. Hey, we're not gonna, hey, don't be late to the meeting, you can't be late. So there's a lot of times where if you establish these things, they're amongst themselves, keeping themselves accountable. And the one that I always forget is when people are meeting and exceeding expectations in a positive way, let them know, right? Sometimes they're like, they're doing good, they're not a problem, and they don't get any accolades for that. And we forget to tell the people that are our star performers that keep doing what you're doing. It really reinforces the behavior that you want to see. One thing we kind of talked about earlier is sometimes you have those performers that are low performers and you're addressing them. They're working through a corrective action plan, an improvement plan, and they're getting better at, their interactions and meetings. And when you see them struggling and actually doing better, say, hey, great job this meeting. I saw you were getting triggered by Laura over here having this conversation. And you really, I didn't see no eye rolling. And for someone, maybe that's a thing. Maybe that was good job today. You were winning. So sometimes even that is reinforcing. Thank you for noticing that I'm really trying, really reinforces behaviors that you want to see. So all of this wrapped up to having these tough talks is very important, so that when you're telling them this is not okay and this is okay, it's really clear. I tell my kids, this is what success looks like. And you really identify it. And this is what it does not look like. Success looks like you hold the door open, you help your team member, all these things on what it looks like and be very descriptive. And this is what it doesn't look like. We don't talk about other people. We don't use passive aggressive. We're not using profanity, all these things. So it's really clear for your staff to do that. And again, I always think of not perfection, but really mitigating, setting the foundation. So when you do have to have them, it's not so many, not so intense, and you feel a little bit more confident because they're skilled up in a lot of these areas. And then why even have these? Why does it even matter in the workplace? Go to work, they're doing a job, the place didn't burn down. Why even consider why tough talks need to be talked about a little bit more? And here's some reasons. Builds trust and respect. This one is a really big one because who has a boss that they've had that just like you would go to the ends of the earth for them? If they called you and they said, can you do this? And you're like, I will drop everything and I will go do that. there's a reason for that. There's probably some trust and respect that was built along the way in your communication and your relationship. This is how the tough talks happen. That builds, it shows that you can have these conversations because you care about them enough to talk to them about something that's a little bit uncomfortable and awkward. It improves performance. I have a personal story on this one. When I was young in my I'm so young, guys, I know. But younger in my HR career, we had a consultant come in and we had a new CEO and she was like, hey, you guys are doing a really good job, acclimating to the new CEO. I was like, yeah, but we keep telling him to do this and he's not doing it and blah, blah, blah. And she just looked me straight in the eyes, gave me some tough love and said, that's not your job. And I was like, oh, punch to the gut, like, oh my gosh, kind of thing. But it was really good advice. She said, as an HR person, the CEO's job is to make the decisions. Yours is to advise and counsel. You bring all the things to their attention, give them recommendations, and they make decisions. That's why they get paid the big bucks. And this is why you get paid the big bucks. So you're doing what you need to be doing. It's out of your control. That's somebody else's job. And at first I was like, ouch, that was some tough feedback. And later I really appreciated that she cared enough to put that out there. And I think sometimes we don't want to hurt people's feelings. I think somebody said that, hurting people's feelings, but it's a growth opportunity that people have when maybe you can tell them some of the blind spots that they have, that they could work with. So it improves performance in that way, creates a culture of accountability, encourages open communication and reduces turnover. How many people leave or have left jobs because they're like, oh, I can't. This is too much. The environment is they're not addressing, Rachel's like, April over here. So if there's all these things happening, you're gonna lose your star performers and you're gonna be left with your mediocre performers or low performers. So this is what can happen when you don't have those tough conversations. There's also small issues turning into big ones, right? I don't want to talk about it. Let's sweep it under the rug. Let's see if it disappears. And then it becomes a huge problem. Let me go back to this really quick. Toxic workplace culture, that can happen. I've seen that happen. It can turn toxic in a couple months and it takes so much longer to go back into something more positive. Leaders stress. I had one client tell me a couple of weeks ago, did a time study on her time. 40% of her week was spent dealing with one employee's poor performance and behavior. And this was an operations director. Like, shouldn't they be doing some other work? Like outreach, getting more business, and instead you're dealing with one person because they didn't want to have the tough conversations. And then legal risk. So that's where we want to transition into Debra. Now we're in the workplace, right? We own our business, we're leaders of the business, and some of the tough conversations have to happen and we have to document these properly because we can get into some legal situations where if we're doing this properly, if we're doing it for the right reasons, you guys are okay legally to be able to do that, especially if you're skilled up to have the conversations. So Deborah's going to talk a little bit more about the difficult conversations in the workplace and what those look like.
Thank you. Very good, ma'am. Awesome. Which one am I pushing here to get going?
To the right.
To the right. Perfect. Thank you
Okay.
guys for having me. It's really good to be here today. I'm trying to keep my throat from closing up, so forgive me if I get hoarse here. So difficult conversations are obviously, we know, are part of life. We have them at work, we have them at home, and hopefully we're managing those in a way that is useful and productive. And I mean, have you ever had a conversation where you think, this is just, I'm gonna let this person know I'm leaving for the day. This is my experience one day. And I'm telling my employee, hey, I'm heading out. It's a Friday afternoon. I'll see you on Monday. And the response I got was very shocking. She was angry and she was confrontational and she was mad that I was leaving early and that she wasn't. And so it was a little jarred, like, all right, I guess I need to maybe address this at one point. So I turned, it's late, I want to go. And I put my hand on that door and something inside me said, nope, you need to go back. So I really, really, really wanted to avoid the conversation. I was headed somewhere and I needed to go, but at the same time, I knew if I didn't address it at that moment, I'd be sorry. And so I took that opportunity to take a breath, obviously triggered, as we talked about. But you go back in and you say, hey, I'd like to get a little feedback on what's going on. You seem angry. Tell me what's going on. And then you listen. And for me, some things were going on at home, she was upset about A, B, and C. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know that was happening. But let's talk about this on Monday when I get back, because I'd like to discuss how this interaction went. And so at least having that touch point. So you're saying, hey, that wasn't okay. I understand you've got some stuff going on at home, but I didn't deserve that. And I'm not gonna go over the reasons why I feel I should leave early since I worked 60 hours last week. So let's talk about this on Monday. But again, difficult conversations will present themselves and we need to take those opportunities to at least have a touch point. The longer those issues are left unattended, the bigger they get, as Laura talked about. And then when you're preparing and thinking about having that conversation, you might want to flip the script. Your mindset can change in thinking about, oh gosh, I don't want to hurt this person's feelings, all the reasons why we don't want to do it. But if you look at it as an opportunity to help this employee achieve goals and to grow. So flipping that script in your mind of, this is uncomfortable for me, but I'm gonna reframe it. Hey, how can we get you to the point you want to be? You want to get a raise, you want to move up in positions. Let me help you with that. So let's talk about some ways that we've maybe had some fails in communications. I had the same employee had upset the director of the agency, and she was on the list. She was on the bad list. And corporate had flown down from California and they demoted her and they didn't give her a raise for tears. And then I got her. I was like, all right, okay, we can do this together. I know this has been a struggle, but let's work on it. So those are the kinds of things that you can start looking at when having difficult conversations. Whoops, wrong one, sorry. All right. Starting with you, and I happen to work for Highstreet Insurance, and magically, when I came to work for this company, I was so surprised at their mission and goals. And this is what they are. It's relentless courage. Be present, be empathetic, and be vulnerable. And I thought that was really fitting for this group today, because when you're presenting this information, you can really look at yourself, and it takes courage, because we don't like to have these conversations other than you. And be present. Again, these items will really help you reframe how you're going into these conversations. Preparation. So I used to go in and just wing it, and it was like, that is terrible. Like, what am I doing wrong? And my mentor was like, okay, look, let's stop and think about how this could have gone better. You didn't have this and you didn't have that. And let's next time do an outline. Yeah, so she gave me all these great tips. So prepare a written outline for the conversation, notes on the items that you're going to be covering. So you feel confident and you're calm, and that will help them feel calm. Utilize forms such as, an investigation summary report, which I'll talk about later. But if it's high stakes conversations like harassment or, something that could blow up big, not just like, he looked at me and I don't like the way he looked at me, we're talking about big stuff. So be prepared with forms, gather your facts from others. So if you know that others may have information for you to add to this conversation, you don't want to get in there and say, well, you missed your deadline and this has happened 4 other times. And they say, well, manager B gave me permission to be 3 weeks late on it. Well, all right. So there's ways that we can also mitigate that. And sometimes you're just not going to know until you get in there. And then gather relevant policies. I talked about that from your handbook. So if you're going to have a conversation about attendance, or you're going to have a conversation about, they're being disrespectful, or, what's your handbook say about that? And I come prepared with that, as well as, so we can say, look, when you were hired, here's your handbook information, and this is what we expect of all of our employees. And we'd expect this from me, from our president, from everyone. So these are the expectations. You have it in writing, and that will help you down the road as well. And we'll talk more about that. It's going on. I keep hitting the wrong buttons. All right. So now we're going to sit with the employee for the meeting, and we're going to gather the facts from this person. So again, we're coming in with, we want to take notes. We want to be detailed in those notes. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of water here. And again, as I mentioned, if you're gonna do an investigation and it's seeming like it's gonna be a lot of information, I will generally have a second person in the room to help me take notes, especially if it's an emotional subject, the person is kind of all over the place. So that I can kind of manage the person and someone else is taking notes, so that works well. And then focus on the behavior. So again, we're talking about, I like to say, hard on the issue, soft on the person. So we're gonna focus on that issue and we're going to give that person grace when needed. And if, as they may become agitated or upset, I've experienced all manner of things. I had a gentleman who threw a clipboard at me and, and then he picked it up and threw it again at me. And I was like, all right, okay, well, I think we should take a break, don't you? So if you can have a seat, and I went and got back up and I said, look, this is getting a little out of hand. We've got it. We can do this. And I need you just to come and support me. So, again, there's just, you manage it as it happens. And then I talked about taking note of new information. Sorry, yes.
Okay, at that point, if someone's throwing something at you, why wouldn't you just fire them?
Well, and that's a
But that's
great,
safety.
no, absolutely, great question. I wanted to, I actually, and I'll expand on that. I wasn't thinking about my safety, but at the same time, my body was saying, go get someone. So I wasn't in my mind, but my body said, go get someone. So I went and got the program manager. He came in and what's going on? And so he helped me diffuse the situation enough to have the person safely leave. So I pretty much ended the meeting at that moment and said, okay, it's time for you to go. And yeah, I will be, well, and I will be in touch, but you're not welcome here until you hear otherwise from me. And the person was actually on a workman's comp claim situation. And so we had them doing light duty. So there was all these sort of complex things that were going on in that. So I had to get my head together about, okay, I have to fire this person. They're on work comp. All these things, right? And so, and I needed for the program manager to, okay, you heard that and saw that. And then he got sort of like in this guy's face as well. So it was like, okay, time to get him out of here. But it was a thing. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You would want to do that, but in my mind, I sort of tried to slow it down a little bit and see, can we get him out of here safely, me out of here safely? There was no weapons involved, but you don't know. So again, calling in backup was my first thought. And then, okay, what do I do to mitigate all these other things that are happening, and then get the documentation together and then work on getting him fired. On the back end, he obviously was told, yeah, you're fired, you're not coming back here. And then we had to kind of howl the backup so that we could say we legally fired him.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that question. Again, opening the conversation, I usually will like to start by inviting the person to share and say, can you share with me your thoughts behind this conversation? Or, can you share what happened on this day at this time? This thing happened. Tell me more about that. Okay, and as they're talking, we're actively listening. And what else? Really? Okay, that's interesting. We're engaging a little bit, but we're inviting them to tell us the complete story. And with that, a lot of times more information will come out. I mentioned, it would be, well, this manager told me this. Oh, the manager. Oh, okay. So note, I need to talk to that manager. And so was standing there. They saw the whole thing. Didn't know that. Okay. So you really want to have this active conversation versus you did this and you're bad and now you're gone. We want to invite that open conversation. And the more we stay calm and give grace where we can, we're going to go further with that employee. And then again, just mirror back and summarize what you've heard so that, if you're note taking, that helps for the other person, or you're just saying, especially if they're emotional, you want to make sure you get the facts right or what they're saying. Any questions? Okay, perfect. All right. This is obviously so important, and the why is pretty obvious, but I like to kind of go over this slide. It enhances the employee's performance and their development. Again, thinking of changing your mindset to how is this gonna help this person improve? How will this help them grow? And I have had people who are like, I'm so appreciative and so thankful that we had that conversation. I was in such a bad place and I didn't realize it was affecting me. And so those are the wins. That's where we want to be with people. Sometimes, you can have these conversations over and over and it ends up in a termination. And that's sad to me because you want people to be able to feel like you're there for them as HR. We're advocates for them as well as the company. We want to try to help them along and keep them. You give them clear performance expectations and you provide accountability. And as Laura mentioned, in many conversations or many instances with managers, it's tough and it doesn't lead you to where you need to be. And it provides constructive feedback and development. And then obviously we're talking a little bit about the legal ramifications of this stuff. We want to make sure we're doing it in a fair and consistent way. Because, it does happen. It doesn't matter if you do everything perfectly. Sometimes people will file a lawsuit. And then that's where what you've done all along will help you get through that. And, that is just part of life today. And why is it important for the manager and the company? It facilitates effective conversations. Again, just because people are managers doesn't mean they're good at it or they like it either. And so this helps to facilitate effective conversations across the board for the manager and the company. It provides objective performance evaluations. So if we're giving that continuous feedback, then their performance evaluation will be fair and consistent and won't be hopefully a surprise at the end. And then it creates a history to support management recommendations and it provides legal protection, hopefully. And then improved organizational performance. We need a music break and a little workout. It seems so quiet in here, you guys. We should have built something in. Go ahead.
I do Zumba.
Go ahead.
I could do a
Like,
song.
lead us in a cheer. All right, because this is pretty dry stuff, so. Okay, so when to document, again, I really like and had learned from a great mentor that she did one-on-ones with her employees on a very consistent basis, I think weekly. And she was like the deputy director of the Department of Ecology. It's like, how do you have time for all of this? But she made time and it made such a difference. And people stayed in those positions for a long time because they felt like a team and they always knew what was going on with that transparency, the one-on-ones. And then also asking for the feedback back. So that 360-degree feedback. You want to sit and pause and listen. And what's going on for you today? How's your weekend? I have a one-on-one form, which I should have brought, but not. But I could send that out to anyone that wants. And it gives you an opportunity to not only talk about the work that's coming up, but also, what's going on for them personally. So that you can know when, hey, need to be a little soft with things with this person and you can check in. Hey, I don't need to be in your business, but you doing okay? Is there anything you need from me? Do you need time away? I like to say, some of us have jobs where, we're doing stuff. We're not saving lives here, people. We need to take care of each other and you need to take care of yourself. And then when it's time to come back to work, we're here. So I like to keep that feedback going. Performance discussions always, again, in the moment, when the opportunity arises, in your one-on-ones, maybe in your mid-year discussions, and then your annual reviews. Progressive discipline process then comes next. In your verbal, your written warnings, your corrective actions, and then your final warnings and terminations. So that's kind of the cycle of your documentation. And then hopefully it won't end up in a legal situation, but if you do, you will need to have all of that ready to go. So it's really, really, really important, even if it's just bullet points. We'll talk about some of that here in just a minute. Some common mistakes in your documenting, or when managers are waiting for the last minute. So here's an example. Oh, sorry. Hi, this is Stephanie. There you go. Okay. I want to let my employee go because he's always late. I told him multiple times that he can't be late anymore. So here's one that the manager comes into HR and says, I want to get rid of this person. And here's what they say. So you say, well, when was he late? Well, I don't know, he's just late all the time. So again, this ambiguous sort of, here's my thoughts and here's my feelings about this person, but what are the facts? So, yeah, not good. Example 2. I talked with the employee a few months ago, and about his mistakes, and I want to let him go. Okay, this happened to me. Hey, this person, here's your first fire as you come on board. Okay, where's the documentation? We don't have any. Well, what's going on? Well, they wrecked the company car and they haven't sold anything in 2 years and we don't know what they're doing. All right, okay. So can you just at will it? That whole at will thing? Like, well, that's not really what that's about, but, and they didn't have HR, they were just managing. And so here I came and it's like, okay, I see we have work to do here. And I said, well, actually, no, what I would recommend is that you start from today and you start documenting what's happening. And so we need to set some expectations. So there again, you can't go there with that. Here's another, my new employee is frustrating his coworkers. He's lazy and he never offers to help. Okay, that's not somebody's feelings, is it? I mean, where's the facts in that? So again, we really have to be careful about how we advise people to say, okay, let's back this up. What's really happening? And where are the facts? On what day, what time, what action, what facts? Right, moving forward. So best practices. We want to document specific examples with the date. I just sort of talked about that. So again, here's a good example is John arrived late to work by this many minutes on these days. And as a result of this, he delayed the start of the shift, which negatively impacted production goals. So this happened in a manufacturing plant I worked in. And this guy just decided it was cool to come in late all the time. Didn't matter. We're like, dude, right? Like the line, it's held up. And he just But again, we can't just say you're late all the time. We have to have facts. Again, be factual. Observable behaviors. On May 15th, Jane missed the deadline for the project deliverable by 3 days. Okay, so we could have what resulted in that, and the result lost the client. Another example. Avoid vague or inflammatory language. Mary is difficult to work with, or Bill isn't organized, he doesn't care. So these are just our opinions. These aren't facts. Joe always misses deadlines. Bob doesn't respect his manager. So, right. So we're talking about feelings, not facts here. And then we want to be objective and we want to use the very, very clear, concise, objective criteria for our conversations and our documentation. Ask yourself, does the employee know and understand what are the expectations? Because sometimes it's, like the guy that was just late all the time, he's like, whatever, but maybe someone doesn't really know, what the real expectation is, or well, I don't know how to do that. No one ever showed me. So it's not that they can't. Well, it's not that they won't, it's they can't, right? They need some training. So what do we need to do about that? Avoid bias and subjectivity. Check yourself. So if you're a manager, God, that dude, he's always in this or that. You have, sometimes there's things with people and maybe you have a history or a past with someone and you have to be willing to look past that and go, again, facts are super important. We talk about these areas, the halo effect again, allowing one positive aspect of someone. So here's the opposite. Maybe we're friends outside of work. And I don't, oh, they're a great guy. They work really hard. So we'll just let this go. That doesn't help when the other employee and the other management team is being disciplined for the same thing. So there's that. Regency, focusing too much on the most recent events, rather than the employee's performance over the entire, right? So maybe this one time they do kind of a, not so great thing, or they're like, show up a half hour late, oh God, that's not like you. We're gonna fire you. What's happening? So this is a one-time deal. So keep that in mind. And then, of course, the similarity bias of rating employees more favorably because they are similar to the evaluator, okay? God, we get along so good. Yay, we give this guy 5s. Yeah, I don't click with that guy. So I'm gonna give him a 2 on his eval, right? Or I'm not gonna discipline them because those types of things. So again, be accurate, be honest, be consistent and fair. All right, so we talked about documentation and I've got a few examples here. This is just an example. If I've had a conversation with a manager about an employee and I need to just do a quick, I have to go to a meeting in 20 minutes and I'm just gonna send myself this email. It could be bullet points. I could do this, or sometimes I'll ask the manager, hey, I have to run, but I need you to send me bullet points of what we just talked about. And then we're gonna set up a meeting. So this is just a real quick example of not letting too much time pass, because if you try to go back, 2-3 days passed and now nobody remembers what time it happened or the details. So again, that's just one I like to use. You can do it in any format. And I'm gonna jump back to progressive discipline here and kind of the cycle of what we do. And again, this is documented in our handbook, so employees will know, hey, okay, I've been given expectations and now I'm getting a written warning. Oh my gosh, what's next? And so this is not only for us as managers, but this is so employees will know what to expect. And when you have to defend it and they say, where is that? Did the employee know that this was the next step? Yes, they did. So again, this is just kind of the life cycle of how we do our progressive discipline. And, again, telling managers, please include HR in the process immediately. And again, document after each step. And then some steps may be bypassed depending on how bad or egregious the thing is. So again, with the clipboard throwing, yeah, we're done, right? So if it's violence or, anything like that, we're gonna end that pretty quickly. And then here's just an example of our written warning template. You'll see here that we have all the employees' information. We talk about the, my old eyes, I'm gonna look here now because I can't see that on the screen. Employees not meeting the expectations of their job as an admin assistant. And on this date, they failed to process the incoming mail. In addition, they, these are things, what date, what the thing was. And then for the month of February, they've taken only 10% of the incoming calls received in the office, which is their job to do, like 90% of that. So that outlines the thing, all the things, and then the expectations. So we're sitting with this employee to say, here's what we're seeing as the things you're not meeting, that you need to fix. And then we have not had prior performance discussions, so we won't have anything there. And then in the expectations, we're gonna say, you must process and distribute the incoming mail within 24 hours. So now they know. The mail can't sit in the drawer or on the desk for 3 days. And so on. So we've now laid the groundwork with an employee to know exactly what the expectation is for them moving forward. We have them sign it and we keep it in the file. And we may do a couple of those. So if we may give her another chance and say, okay, these parts are great. You're doing great. You're awesome. The mail's getting done. And we may have to do these, however, are still not getting done. Here's the examples of those. So second warning. And then we may have to go to termination. This is a different example. Again, we start with they're not meeting their performance expectations in their role. We will have given them a written warning, more than likely, depending on what the thing is. And we've got all the list of items that are happening here. And then below the prior performance discussions, that backs up that we've given them an opportunity to fix their behavior. And then missing here, sorry, is the signature page. So those are just some examples of the forms that we use, and that builds your case and shows the documentation and all the efforts that you've taken and that the employee was notified, and that they were given time to fix those areas where they were falling short. And then we talked about this investigation summary template, and sorry, it's not in a very good form, but this is just an example of how I conduct an investigation, and I build my investigation from this form. It helps you, guide you through who you start with, what the issue is, who are the players, who's the complainant, who's the complaint against, who you need, and every time you talk with someone, you're gonna fill in those pertinent details. And then once you close it out, you've got that as well. And so that's just kind of a quick form that I use for that. And I talked about the talking points as well. So here's another one. This is actually what I use for a termination meeting, especially with a manager who's never terminated someone before. Because I've gotten in meetings and like, what am I saying? What am I doing? Oh, are you talking my way? So, you really want to get together and make it as seamless as possible. You don't want to make it any worse than you have to for the employee. And again, still giving grace and empathy when you're doing this is really, really important. So that's why I try to have everything set out and ready to go. And I talk the manager through it. Here's what I'd like you to stay away from. Saying you're sorry and rehashing things and going deep into details about why we're here is not productive. So this is really, this meeting lasts anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes. And so I really try to manage that and to help our managers know that this is kind of where we're at. And if I have to interrupt, I take the meeting back and we just keep on task. And everything gets sent back to the employee in writing so that they know that they can ask me questions after the fact. But I don't typically do those in an interactive process because we've already done that. So that's kind of what this is. All right, and down to the legal and ethical considerations. So we want to minimize our litigation risks. Clear and concise, complete documentation will reduce the liability in the event a claim is filed. It will reduce the fact that they will file the claim, but hopefully minimize your risk once that happens. And then your confidentiality, just a few items about confidentiality and privacy, just ensuring compliance with your local, state, and federal regulations, especially when you have folks who have medical issues, but you're still having to terminate them. That's always tricky. Or workman's comp claim, as I mentioned before, with the other items. So, you just want to be thinking about all of those layers. And I utilize my legal department a lot because, I use them. I have folks in the state of Oregon, so I have a contact at the Department of Labor in Oregon that I work with. I've called the feds too as well, when it's like, hey, I want to run this, tell me about this situation and what the laws are for accommodation, for example. So I'd like to do a lot of research before we get to this point. And that way I know that I've done my due diligence as best I can. So, again, let's see where we're at. Yeah. Keep records inaccessible and secure to protect your employees' privacy. So, ask HR for assistance and get us involved as soon as you can. For those of you that aren't maybe in HR. So.
We have about 5 minutes left.
Perfect.
We need to start.
Awesome. That's perfect segue. So Josh is going to talk about EPLI insurance, what happens when a company does have a lawsuit filed. So I'm going to let Josh take it away.
And I will do everything I can to make the insurance part as thrilling. As insurance by its very nature typically is not. I'm kind of a game time substitution. You guys are fantastic. I hadn't seen you present before. Excellent, meaningful, very strong content. It was awesome.
We
So-
paid him to say that.
That's why I came in. So EPLI stands for Employment Practices Liability Insurance, and that's the line of your coverage that engages if you ever get sued by someone who claims wrongful termination, discrimination, harassment, that sort of thing, right? Even if the claim is frivolous and they get a lawyer, you still have a duty to defend yourself. You still have some costs incurred. The average in Washington, so I have clients, I've seen $20,000 to $40,000 claims, and I have a guy right now that's in the middle of $1 million litigation for harassment. And so they cover a range, but the average is $258,000 on average for an EPLI, employment practices claim. So for me, that's the benchmark for the insurance. I would want to see my clients all have at least $250,000 of EPLI coverage to make sure that they're prepared in the event of that sort of a claim. I'm more comfortable at higher limits, but I'm not the one paying the bill, right? And so it's up to the individual. The thing that I like to do also is work through what's your risk of exposure. So employers that have like a high turnover, big volume of employees, by their very nature will have a higher exposure. The other place where I see a little higher exposure is industries where there's a lot of volunteers. It's because typically volunteers aren't always vetted to the same extent that an employee would be, right? So you have an interview process and that sort of a thing. A lot of times volunteers are brought in with the background check and here's where you're going to volunteer at, that sort of a deal. So there are different levels of exposure and you'd want to measure what makes the most sense to you because insurance costs, right? It's expensive. But this line of coverage is critical and you just want to make sure that your limits make sense for you and your exposures. So first thing I'd want to suggest is that you talk to your insurance agent and make sure that your current policy has EPLI coverage. It's not automatically included by any means. When it is thrown in, and I do see insurance policies like business owners policies where they include EPLI, usually those limits are around the $25,000 to $50,000 range, which helps, but it's not sufficient if your average is $250,000, right? The other things, and this is very insurance-y stuff, so I'm just gonna kind of gloss over these two other pieces, but you want to make sure that the policy has what they call outside defense limits. So if you have a $500,000 limit on your EPLI, on an outside defense limits claim, that full amount is for your settlement, and the insurance company has a separate pool for your defense costs, your lawyer fees, right? So when we look back at that $250,000 average, 185 is a settlement, 73,000 is your defense costs. And so outside the limits is beneficial. And the other one, a lot of times is excluded, but I think it's really important, is what they call third party. So I talked about employees and volunteers, EPLI is there to protect. If you had a customer or a vendor or someone that had a claim of discrimination or harassment, that policy would not engage unless it has what they call third party, meaning not employee or volunteer. It would be a customer or a vendor in those cases. All right. And that's it. That's your insurance nerd 101 EPLI. Yes.
I think, adding to that is, that's why it's so important to have the tough conversations, because I'm hearing the number 250,000, that's a lot, right? That you have to go and defend. And when Debra was talking about the documentation, as an HR person, I train my managers, the CEOs, my clients to really document well, create a great environment, address issues as they happen so that we're not at the 250,000, like at all of this stuff. If we can prevent those things, document it so well that if I have to defend it in court, I think over my career, I've been in 7 lawsuits, not me personally, but like assisting in our agencies lawsuits. And when it comes to that, the documentation, 6 out of 7 golden. And that was the documentation. Everything was done properly. We followed policy. We gave opportunities, extra training. Everything was done great. The one time that it wasn't, it's because those things were not followed. And that's why these tough conversations are so important, because we think about it as, oh, it's so awkward. I don't like it. They're going to get mad. It feels weird, but it feels so much worse when you're like, how much does that cost us? How much, kind of thing. That's a bad feeling right there. So thank you for giving us that insight. It really goes hand in hand with, yes, sometimes it's just a feedback or a coaching conversation, but sometimes those conversations are so tough that you really need to nip them or at least start documenting, because they can become something really big.
Yeah.
So thank you for going
Yeah.
on with that.
Yeah, but flip it, make them feel good about it, right? Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like what you said about the mindset about feedback and
Yeah,
those tough conversations are gifts, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't feel like it, but they truly are.
I think that's growth and development for the person. too.
Yeah,
When you have
absolutely.
the Conversation back.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you can start off with somebody you think is not gonna cut it, and they turn out to be one of your best employees.
absolutely.
By giving that feedback, and
Yeah.
listening to them.
Yeah, and if you frame it in the front end of that, hey, we want to see you succeed and we want to see you grow. You're valuable to us. We want to help you. Tell us what your goals are. How do we get there together? We have a common goal. How do we get there? And a lot of times that will take away the feeling of, you're telling me I'm a bad employee. So you want to help me? Oh my gosh. Okay, well, this is what I want to do. We can totally do that. How do we get there?
That's the good behavior.
Very, very much so.
I
Yeah.
just had that happen with one of my clients where, they were ready to be like, she's gotta go. She's just, not performing, she's not getting along with her team, but her skill set was great and her customer service, she was doing something more analytical and her customer service, skills were really great. So they moved her to a different spot where she's
Yeah.
thriving and getting promoted. So sometimes it's the conversation that could lead to a termination, or it's that conversation, if we're really listening, could lead to having another star performer,
Yeah.
they're just not in the right seat in the bus.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're right, that growth opportunity and the performance improvements can happen just by having that talk, because you could have a star player that's a diamond in the rough, for sure. Yeah.
Let's open it up for questions.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when you guys are having those difficult one-on-ones and you prep, do you in the actual one-on-one have like all the key points listed out that you want to go
I do,
over? And
I
you
do.
just go back and forth?
I do, yeah, I do. For example, if it's about attendance, so I had one recently who, she just had a lot of stuff going on in her life but, we did the numbers, and I got the information from the manager. I pulled her time off of the Paycor system and it turned out she was gone like 42% of the time and she'd only been there 6 months. Be like, wow, okay, so when you show that to them, and you go, okay, here's the data, here's the data. So what can we do to, it was about her childcare too, so we're willing to work with you in at least this much, so will that help? Well, no, not really. So, then we have to have the conversation of, here's the business need. Like, we need someone here 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and we have to meet the business need, so if that's not gonna work, maybe we need to talk about, and we don't have another position for them to go to. And we try to, well, I need an accommodation. Okay, well, that's a whole other ball of wax, but, we have a duty and we have advertised for a position to fill this time period or to do these duties. And if you're not capable or you're not willing to, then, we need to have a other difficult conversation. But yeah, definitely, I have bullet points. And if it's gonna be another manager, sometimes they'll start it and I do the bullet points for them based on what they've said, so that I know that they're gonna stay on topic and they're gonna focus on the facts and not the person. And sometimes it's like, I know maybe you have some kind of feeling about this person, but we're gonna just talk about the facts. So you gotta keep them focused.
And I would agree. I prep my conversations like I prep for a 3-day weekend. 7 outfits, different shoes.
Yeah.
What am I gonna need? Like, am I working now? I better take it just in case. I never do, but I take it just in case. So that's how I prep my conversations. I over prepare so that I'm ready for anything that could happen. And I'm glad you asked, because I have this that I have, that I could email me, I'll give it to you. It really does put my mind like, the bullet points that I need to go, because I had this one situation, lesson learned, where I had to have a really hard conversation about their performance and behavior. So she comes in, I'm like, hey, can you come to my office? She comes in, she looked like she'd be crying, and I'm like, hey, are you okay? I'm so sorry, I'm just really tired. My cat got sick. I had to put him down overnight. Like, I was up all night. We had to go take him. And I was just like, oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that. And I totally lost my train of thought. I didn't write anything down, so I didn't even know what I was gonna talk to her about. Well, what did you want to talk about? I'm like, I don't even remember. So like, these things really, when they get you, especially when they're coming at you and you're getting triggered or emotional, or they're getting emotional, or they lead you to something else sidetrack wise, my bullet points bring me back, right? It helps me to concentrate on what's the task at hand, what's the conversation at hand, and it really does that. So I prepare beforehand. That's why I don't like the drive-bys. If I do get a drive-by and it's an important conversation, I'm like, oh yes, I definitely want to talk to you about that. Come to my office. Let's do 3 o'clock today. Stop by, and then I'm ready to go. Because something will take me off track, and I don't know if you guys can notice, I'm a flighty, I'm all over the place. So this keeps me nice and organized. If you guys want a copy of this, I'll put it in Word format. My clients, what they do is they take it and they put what they want to ask and how they want to prepare for that. So yes, I would definitely bullet point whatever information and factual stuff that you want to do.
So how does your approach change when the difficult conversation is with your leader or a peer?
Hey, those are the tough ones.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Make sure my boss is in here.
Yeah,
Hold
well,
on.
turn the,
Any of my clients here? Okay, we're good.
turn the camera on.
That's great.
Don't show us. I mean,
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I just wanna know what the approach, how the approach is different when the difficult conversation is with your leader, your manager, or up here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think it changes too much. I think your approach has to change because they're in a different level. So when you're talking to someone, you've made expectations for people who report to you, because you're on the authority level. If it's peer to peer, I had to have one, that was manager to manager. We just oversaw different departments, and his department was really making an impact into mine. He wasn't giving me the information that I needed, which was delaying, made us look bad, made us look like our information was late because we didn't get theirs in time. So how do you say that nicely to your coworker or have that tough conversation? So I think one of the things we talked about is starting from a good place. What do you want the outcome of that conversation to be? I don't want him to get in trouble. I don't want to tit for tat with the guy, you know, I just want to get the stuff I need in time. So if we can come starting with a good place and say, hey, do you have time? I have a concern I want to go over with you. Nothing major, but I want to get your take on that. And sometimes it's just, well, here's how I'm taking this, or here's what I'm seeing. Are you seeing this differently for me or something? And when I had the conversation, it was one of my first peer-to-peer conversations having, I'm like, okay, you know, and you're just kind of like, what I do, you know, so a couple days to take the courage
Yeah.
to come and do that. It was so easy. I'm like, hey, I wanted to run something by you. Here's what when my staff are telling me, blah, 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 and this is the impact that it's having. So I feel like we're not getting it in time. Are you seeing it differently? It's like, oh, do you need it sooner? Okay. It was like that easy. You know, sometimes we dwell on it and we give ourselves anxiety about it, and it usually isn't as bad as we thought it was. I would still use the same intent. What outcome do you want? And coming from a place of where your intention is, I just want the outcome to be this. It's not about you. It's not about you, the person. If it's going up to your boss, I would use the same thing. I had to have this one when I worked in corporate. I had to tell my boss, you're not listening. Listen, right? How do you tell your boss, like, stop typing and listen to me, you know, kind of thing. I would come in and we would review investigation notes. And she's like, go ahead, no, I'm listening, go ahead, tell me. And then so I'd go through my whole spiel and she's like, I'm sorry, what? And I'm like, well, you would just stop and listen to me. So I get it, so I'm like, oh my God, you guys too. So when it's something like that, you know, now it's feedback. Like, hey, you know, I feel like when I come in, I don't want to waste your time, but I do feel it's important that I have this information. Is there a different way that I can approach it that might be helpful for you? So then I make it like, how can I help you? Even though it's bugging me, how can I help you? So that's when you're going up the chain, and a little bit of finessing that you could do. So sometimes it's like, if this isn't working for me, what approach can I use that would work for you? And they're like, oh, am I doing that? My bad. So then after that, she'd be like, hold on, ready, tell me, you know, kind of thing. So a little exaggerated, but you know, just kind of knowing who you're working with, always coming from what outcome do I want from this conversation? And it usually isn't to get at that person. It's, I just want something to be different or to be changed. That's usually the approach.
And the
What do you
style.
got?
Well, and the style, you have
Oh,
to
yeah.
know, like, they're your boss, right? Or the leader of your company. So I've had times where, you know, you have to have not a great conversation with your boss. And so I usually, if they're get easily distracted, hey, can we, not I need you to, can we? You know, the way I frame it that way, I get a better response. Can we talk about something in my office at 2 o'clock? Or that, yeah, and they come and then you've got their full attention versus at their computer where they're, right? So that's tip number 1. And I will usually frame, hey, I've noticed this, and here's what the results are, how that's affecting me, if it's about me, or here's how this is affecting this group of people. And so I just wanted to make you aware, and here's my recommendation or what my thoughts are on it, but I'm gonna leave it with you to think about. And then if you wanna talk about how we can do it, so sometimes I leave it. And then sometimes I say, so we have to have this resolved by the end of this week because this is happening or whatever. So can we, and come to me, and here's what I see, and here's what I think we should do. And I wanted to give you my thoughts, and then I'm gonna leave it, because usually they wanna make the decision 9 times out of 10. And if they don't, they'll say, well, what would you do? I have managers who do that. Well, what would you do? They want me to tell them. And then, you know, sometimes they'll go, but no, I think what I'd really like to do is great. And then, I mean, I get to accept it. Sometimes I don't maybe all the way agree with it, but it's okay, you know, as long as you are, and I can leave it with you, and I've said my piece, and we've come to a resolution, and then I communicate it in the best way possible. Here's why, as much as I can tell you about why, and here's what we're gonna do. Does that help?
Here's a question from Chamber Ambassador Chad Yost. How do you know when you are balanced with empathy and accountability when it comes to hard discussion?
Good one.
Yeah, oh, sure. I think if you can really go to a place where you can put yourself in that person's shoes, and a lot of times I talked about our values of being vulnerable. Sometimes I might pull a story out, not to sort of one up somebody, but I'll say, I had a similar thing happen to me, and here's what happened, and just real short. And then you're giving them that empathy that, so I know where you're at, and I've been there, and here's what I did. And maybe that's something you need to think about. What do you think would work for you? So I think that empathy, but at the same time, I always go back to, we're here for a common goal, and that is to whatever our common goal is. And we need to meet our business needs. And at the end of the day, we have to take care of our clients, right? That's what we're here to do. But how do we do that in a way that honors what's going on for you? And, how can I help? Those kinds of things. So I think you can show them that, hey, I've been there. I got read the riot act one time, and it didn't feel good, but, I realized that, yeah. Does that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to add to that with the empathy is there's some times where you gotta get your employees to do their job, right?
Sure.
Like, we pay you to do this thing, you're not doing it or you're not doing it well. So we need to have that conversation, and you wanna have it with a sense of urgency, like, hey, if we don't get this fixed, if your attendance isn't here, the store doesn't open in time, then there's we lose customers for that, we lose sales, whatever it is, it's the sense of urgency where you wanna give them the expectation, but in the way that you communicate, it doesn't have to be very authoritative, like, and if you don't do it, you're gonna be fired, the empathy comes in where I gotta tell you what the expectations are. I know that I believe in you. I know you could do it. You've been doing it in the past and you've done a good job. So how do we get you there? The empathy is like, how do we get you there? I care about your success. But I also know that we have a job to do here. And my job, my accountability is to make sure that you're doing your job properly too. Help me help you. What's the plan? And then have them come up with some things, sometimes themselves. Because if you tell them what to do, it's not as good as if they come up with the solution themselves.
On that note, for me, it doesn't work with every employee in every situation, but there are times that you say what you need to say in the way you need to say it as the supervisor, and then really kind of take that pause of, okay, now I've told you what I need to tell you as your supervisor. Now, as friend Michelle to friend employee so-and-so, this is what I want to be able to tell you. And it is that more real, frank advice from a friend. It is still coming from a good place. You're still not saying anything that gets you sideways with HR. But it does come differently. It is more of that real talk. Versus
being vulnerable.
these are the things that I needed to tell you. And it also helps them to kind of separate that difference between the accountability and the formality of some of those hard conversations. And then to be able to also soften it with can we just have some advice and some conversation as people? And that has tended to work well for me.
I love that. I actually use that with my kids, where it's like the hard mom, right? Your curfew was at 11, ma'am, and you're blah, 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 blah. I'm not sure why you think you run the show here. Whatever that supervisor, I'm the supervisor, that's the hat I'm wearing. And later like, look, it's not that I don't want you to have fun, but there's rules and there's reasons that way. So then it's that touch point coming back to say, I'm checking in on you. Yes, we had to have a tough talk, and it was very urgency led, but I do care about you. Like, I know that you could do better. So that's really why I know that you could reach that goal, and that's why I'm really, pushing that. So I like that you said that touch point at the end to, I know you're human, and I believe in you. So yeah. Question back here.
Just kind of wanted to get your guys' take on this. So the documentation part of it all, I think is really important. Where I found in my life is I document a lot of the good stuff. So random conversations, or when they do really good, we say good job, right? But I felt like when you document the good things, it makes it easier And when I have to, because whenever you get written documentation, it really feels like, oh, crap,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
So when you randomly like document good things that they're doing, and then you go to do something that they need to improve on, it makes it a little easier when they see the form, they understand it, and they understand like, hey, this goes two ways, because you also tell me when I'm doing good things and put that on paper.
Yeah.
And I just kind of wanted to get your guys' take on how you feel about document, because I know sometimes that's not good, because then when you go to fire somebody, you have a list of all these great things they did, you know? The cases, so I didn't know
I get it.
how you guys felt, I mean, I don't have an HR,
I mean,
I am HR. so-
yeah, no, I think in what I mentioned, the one-on-one that I do with people.
Yeah. I
We
do
talk
this
about-
every week,
Yeah, part of that is what's going well. And from my perspective and from your perspective, and what's maybe not going so well, from my perspective and your perspective. So maybe they match and maybe they don't.
Right.
But then you have the balance and you get to have that feedback regularly. So sometimes I'll shoot them an email, you know, what I call an attaboy or an attagirl, like, hey, I just want you to know that I appreciate you. And I was in a meeting today and the executive leadership team talked really great about you doing this project. So I just want to, and I was in the meeting and I decided I need to tell her because she was feeling defeated about this project. So I'm like, hey, just so you know, all is well and nobody knows any of this crap that happened. They just know he did a great job in the end.
And I find that it makes it easier to have the hard conversation later when it is performance or behavior
Yeah.
related, because then you have they know you're invested in their personal growth.
100%. And that's
We don't do
that's
that.
really important. We don't. And I forget that too sometimes. And so that's why I put it on my one-on-one. Don't forget to like, yeah.
And it doesn't really wash away like, oh no, they're doing really bad at their attendance, but really good at this. It's a wash. We can't get rid of them. They're two different
Yeah.
things. So your documentation will address what their performance issues or behavior issues are.
Yeah.
And you'll give them kudos for something different. Now, you can't fire them for something that you have 12 things that they do really good in the same thing. That doesn't make sense. But what you're doing is great. It also helps with, if you're thinking of promoting or raises, sometimes it's hard to think that, what did they do that was so good? Because you always think of the things that they did bad. So you're doing the right thing by doing that and really making sure that, because we're in HR, when they come into our office, hey, can you come into the office? They come in like, hi, good to see me. Like, it's always, they think you're fired or disciplined. That you're bringing them in for positive things is huge for your culture on how it's working there. So excellent. I keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Something I always said to supervisors is, if you have to get rid of somebody or discipline somebody, and it's a small town, just be aware they can be your boss. You never know how things are gonna turn around. So
Yeah.
treat them, they could be your boss the next job you go to, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
100%.
That's huge. And that's where just that compassion, empathy, and grace come along. Like, yes, you have to deliver, maybe they're per performer, per behavior. It doesn't mean you have to deliver the message unprofessionally or disrespectfully. You can still do it with kindness and grace and still be direct about the conversation.
So I know you guys shared like the written warning and they sign. What happens if they're like, I don't agree, I don't want to sign
And
All the time.
yeah, it does. It happens all the time. And generally what I say is this, by signing this, you're not saying that I agree with what's here. You're signing it to say that you received this document. And I will even, if they're that, I'll just say signing received by, but does not, I mean, I'll put whatever they want on there because at the end of the day, they don't really have to. Just like the termination document, 9 times out of 10, they won't sign it. Obviously, oh, I'm gonna sign the termination document. Here you go. I'll take the trouble to scan it in and send it back to you. They don't. And so I just refuse to sign and I sign my name. It doesn't change the facts.
Yeah.
But at least, and if they truly refuse to sign, then I say refuse to sign and I sign it. And then, depending on what you have in your handbook about, we're just asking you to sign so that you have this, then I'm gonna send it to you in an email and I'll know that you have a copy of it.
Right.
Really, we just wanna show that they were notified.
Yeah.
Of these things.
Yeah.
I have a question, with like documenting like meetings and stuff like that, or now with like AI being such a big thing and like recording or summarizing meetings. What's the legal standpoint of that when you're having a meeting and it goes so sidetracked and when you're trying to make summary notes after the fact, like, what did we even talk about? And having that like an AI like recording / summary going on, like, is that legal? Does the person have to be aware? Like, what's the steps there?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's a good
And
one.
I honestly would go to my legal, I don't record those conversations. What I have is I have at least two people from the company in that, and we're both taking notes, or we're both, agreeing on what was said, and everything that I say is in that document. So I don't deviate, and I don't let, at least for those types of conversations, the termination ones, they don't get to interject. So it's just, these are the facts, and they're documented, and this is what we're gonna say. And if you have any questions or comments, you have to send those to me in writing. So there's no dispute on what was said during that conversation. Now, if we're just talking about a disciplinary
One-on-one.
or one-on-ones, I mean, I don't record those.
Yeah, I love AI. I
yeah.
love that a tool as a resource,
Yeah.
but it only does 70-80% of the work. It's just a trigger to get me started. I would probably recommend whatever summary that they're gonna do. Then a human comes in and checks it and says, no, not relevant to what I'm really trying to relay. What I wanted to relay was their attendance and their tardiness. And so this other stuff that they talk about the weekend and their kids' soccer game, relevant, clean it up just so it documents the relevant stuff of the purpose of that conversation. So yes, AI can record it, they can summarize it, but you go give it the look through and make sure that if you have to defend that in court, that's how I write all my documents. If I have to go defend this in court, is it accurate? Is it timely? Does it have the relevant, and is there fluff in there? Take out the fluff and keep that. So use AI, but then use the human element to clean it up.
Well, and your notes, once you get your notes done, you may share, okay, here's a copy of our notes from today's meeting. And then, they got a copy of it. If they don't agree with it, like, I didn't say that, or I didn't hear you say that, or whatever. I mean, I guess, like I said, we haven't used that, and generally I would go to legal and say, okay, what's the deal here? What are we gonna do as a company? And we need to tell them? Yes, we usually need to tell people when we're recording them, like we get on Teams. And I recorded one because I was in my car and I couldn't take notes. So I said, I'm gonna record this because I can't take notes. So I'm just letting everyone know this is recorded and it's just for that purpose. Okay. So, yeah.
That's all the time we have. Thank you all so much. Half hour today.
I know, that was
Like,
good questions.
Holy cow. A couple of things, please. Before you go, take our survey. You can use the QR code, use your phone. We also have physical forms back there. And write the survey responses out. Tell us how we did, tell us what we can do better, and most importantly, tell us what you want in future Ask the Expert sessions. Because we are planning constantly what the next thing is, and we need to hear from you what you want to hear, so please let us know. Join us next month for a really great one. This is all about delegation from leadership and how to hand tasks off to your team without feeling guilty and without all of the things. I need to pay attention, especially. Registration is up. Josie, Aaron, these are two rock stars. I met with them this morning. They're gonna have a lot of quality things to say. So you can register right now on TriCityRegionalChamber.com. And we have giveaways. We have two giveaways, right? Laura
Yes, all right.
brought a bottle of wine.
I brought a bottle of wine from the town that I'm from Prosser, St. Michelle. I can attest to it. I drink it often, so. And that will go for Minnie. Yay, Minnie!
Okay, we have an awesome Highstreet Insurance gift bag
it's
back
awesome.
there.
Lots of goodies in there.
Hey.
Oh,
Oh,
I think-
Leanne.
Yeah.
Also, if you're interested, you can shoot me an email and I can give you this, especially, I know you mentioned back there, if you don't have an HR department, sometimes I have a lot of clients that don't have an HR department. They just like, Laura, I'm gonna do this. Is this okay? Okay, thanks. Like sometimes it's that quick, having a resource for you for some of these things.
If you want to send it to me, I send a wrap-up email to everybody.
Oh,
that's
good.
registered, and I'll get that to everybody.
Excellent. Okay.
All right, thank you all so much for attending. We'll see you next month.
Thank you all. Thank you. Right on time.